Night shift workers of Reddit, what was your oh duck no creepy or scary moment you will always remember? I worked night shift at a gas station, so I saw a lot of weird shit, but I think the worst was a guy who stalked me. I went out to smoke during a calm period. He came up seemingly out of nowhere, with a bag of trash and a knife, and started to explain how he was making flashbangs with a broken Swifter handle and sparklers he had. According to him, he was working with the CIA and the local PD to catch someone. I'm not entirely sure. He was rambling and pulled out a knife, so I didn't listen incredibly well for focusing on what he was doing with the knife. He followed me into the store, cut himself with the knife, and bled on everything, and followed me around until he gave me a glass globe from his trash bag and left. He came back randomly during my shifts for a few months bringing me stuff, and eventually tried to get in my car with me. So, for a while I pulled the late shift at an Italian restaurant when I lived in Canberra. The park across the road was notorious for stabbings and violent robberies. I had to walk through it to get back to my college. For a little while there was this guy that would play the sounds of crying babies or whimpering dogs to lure people deeper into the park, where he would attack and rob them. One time walking along the road that ran through the park at about 1 AM, I heard a baby crying in the park. I noped out of there and booked it back to my college. 2 weeks later the dude was caught. His phone allegedly had dozens of different tracks of babies and dogs crying. I'm surprised that worked. If I heard a baby crying late at night in a park I would shit myself running. Crying baby or not, I hear that shit in the park at 1 AM I'm running the other direction. I would play my own crying baby noises back. Used to work at a late night arcade, and one night around 9:30 PM someone came in wearing a trench coat, which was creepy enough since it was middle of summer in Florida, so it was very hot and humid. They came up to the counter and pulled a rifle out from under the coat and set it on the counter. Of course instantly everyone starts freaking out, and me being the shift lead and highest ranking staff member had to deal with it. We had absolutely no policy for if someone wanted a gun stored while they're on the property, so I just took the rifle and put it in the back room where we kept the money and such. Heavy locked door, only I had a key. I texted all the managers and supervisors to tell them what was up. The dude never came back for it. When I went in the next morning it was still back there, so he never asked the next manager for it back. We kept it there for the next day and then called the police to come in and get it. Never heard anything back about it. But why would the person bring it to an arcade, leave it, and never come back for it? It was fully loaded too. Had the safety on, and I believe there was a trigger lock on it. Definitely one of the creepier things that's happened to me at work. I used to work in a nursing home as a teen to earn some extra cash. I started 8 PM, helped get everyone settled in for the night, and at 11 PM went to bed myself. I was the on-call help for the person doing the awake shift. So if they needed an extra set of hands I'd be there, etc. One shift I was unwell. Turned out I had pneumonia with a raging fever, so the other staff members sent me to bed early. Why she didn't send me home I don't know. I woke in the night to find one of the residents sitting in the chair by my bed, sponging my head and singing to me. It was sweet, but I was very confused as to why she was there as she'd been bedbound for months. I got up in the morning, she was gone. I dressed and dragged myself down to the office to let them know I was going straight to the DRs and wouldn't be in the next night. I told them how this resident comforted me all night, to be met with horrified looks as she had passed away just after I'd gone to bed. Okay, yikes. I worked the third shift at a hotel for a while. One night I'm making the rounds and see something sticking out of the flatbed of a truck. I walk up to see a foot hanging out from under a blanket that very obviously has someone under it. The foot is blue. It's like 40 degrees. I'll never forget how scared I was as I reached out to touch the foot to check it out. As soon as I touched the ankle, a teenage kid sits straight up from under the blanket. Scared the shit out of me. I'm like, kid, what the hell are you doing? He just scroggily says, Dad is snoring too loud. And then he went back sleep. I'd have put him in a room, but we were full. But, yeah. I thought I was going to find a body there for sure. Working a pretty rare Sunday evening shift for a tech company in an office park. Being the weekend, and after hours the whole place is deserted. I'm babysitting a server move at another location. I've got nothing to do, unless the move goes terribly wrong. Then someone knocks on the door. I check the CCTV, nobody anywhere. I convince myself I imagined it. It happens again. Again nobody. I take a quick look around the parking lot for anything making that noise. The lot is empty except for my car. A third set of knocking, and I finally manage to get a bearing on where it is coming from. Not the door, but a co-worker's cubicle. The dipshit had set his embuddy coming online sound to knocking, and run it through his speakers presumably to mess with me. On Monday, when he asked about strange noises, I pretended to have no idea what he was talking about. A week or so later, I moved his office chair to the basement and set his keyboard to Dvorak mode. I work/live in Southern California and had a telephone conference with some people on the East Coast at 7:30 a.m. their time. Though I typically don't even get out of bed until about 7 o'clock West Coast time, I rolled into my 10-story office building at 3:30, bleary-eyed and ass-dragging. I meant to hit the 9, but instead hit the 7 button on the elevator. I walked off the elevator and unlocked the door of an office that was under construction. To this day I don't know why my key worked. I walked through the door into a pitch-dark office. A door closer had been installed but a door knob on the inside had not, and the door closed behind. I fumbled for a light switch, but there wasn't one, and I didn't really panic. I just waited for my eyes to adjust for the small amount of light coming through the windows. Eventually my eyes did adjust, and I noticed a guy standing across from me just staring at me. It scared the ever-living shit out of me. There were a lot of homeless in the area, and I thought one had gained entry, and I was about to get rolled. I asked him what he was doing in there. He just stood there, and I could feel my blood pressure rising. I took a single step toward him, and he took a step toward me, and then I lost it. I went into a full panic, was going to rip the door off the hinges if I had to, but I fell over some construction materials, hit my head on the concrete floor, and was knocked unconscious. I'm not sure how long I was out, but I came to in a pool of my own blood when some construction workers showed up to work. And it turned out after all that, the homeless guy was actually a large mirror, and I quite literally nearly scared myself to death. I had a pretty bad concussion and got 6 stitches in my head. Not exactly night shift, but at the old grocery store I worked at there was always one cashier at a register from 8:30 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. The shift I most commonly worked until I transferred to customer service, and accounting was 3 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. At 10:30 p.m. is when night crew came into the store and I would leave, but for a solid 2 hours it was only me and the assistant manager in the store. This was a very small store. Also should note that I was 19 at the time. One night this group of guys, in their mid to upper 20s, I had to card them, came in with a pretty large order of alcohol and chips. After I rang them up, one guy asked if they could also get 3 boxes of condoms from the customer service desk. It was about 9:30 p.m. and customer service was closed, so I grabbed the key to open up the service desk and the same guy followed me to pick out which ones he wanted. During this time he would make remarks about how quickly he goes through them and how he needs the biggest size there. I like, okay dude, whatever. I grabbed the condoms he wanted, went back to my register, and finished the transaction so these guys could get the fuck out of my store. After they paid, and I handed to one of the guys the receipt, I hear a different guy from the group say maybe we should use these on her while holding the bag that had the condoms in it. I felt my face go white, and they left to go sit down in the deli/restaurant area after laughing at the guy who made the comment. I never in my life felt scared in that store, but at that moment I was scared shitless. I paged the assistant manager over and told him what happened, and he quickly proceeded to walk over to the deli area to tell them to get the fuck out of the store before he called the police. They left, and my manager actually ended up walking me back to my car at the end of my shift to make sure they wouldn't follow me to my car if they were still hanging around. There was a small group of people over by the gas pumps in the dark, and we couldn't see who they were, but I figured it was them. After I left, I heard from my manager the next day that he ended up calling the police to ask them to drive through the parking lot to scare them away. As soon as they saw the flashing lights, apparently they bolted. This is the only time something scary happened to me working at that store, but my god, I was pretty scared for my life that night. I was an intern at a hospital after dropping out of school, basically as a cheap worker, but the staff were very aware of this and treated us well. So in night shift we were 2 nurses and an intern for 2 stations. At like 4 o'clock I brought some middle-aged man I didn't know to his toilet. He wasn't marked as immobile and unstable. I haven't heard of him in like 15 minutes, so I checked for him. First I thought he fell asleep and tried to wake him up. He was still sitting on the toilet. He didn't respond, so I got help, and only after a nurse told me I realized he was dead. It was my first dead person after working there for like 4 months. A colleague had 3 in his first week. Call me dead inside, but now I think it's quite funny. He had a shitty death. As a former EMT, I can tell you quite a few people die on the toilet. I swear I don't want to be insensitive, it's just that I'm genuinely curious on what's the protocol in these situations. Does anybody wipe this guy's ass? Is it done right as he is moved from the toilet, or in the morgue or something? Is the family informed of the particular circumstances of his death? Oh geez, I feel horrible for wondering. Well, we had to pull him off his throne onto a wheelchair and then back on his bed, which we put fresh blankets on first. Then we washed him and put his clothes on him. Also not so simple as we needed 4 people to get him there. In the morning they called his relatives. They were able to come instantly, so he stays in his room until after they visited. Then you put them into basically a big fridge. After that IDK, not my job. Edit, if the relatives can't come fast, the bodies go into the fridge right after the washing and clothes stuff. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until the next video.